Today, I read Ambition, the second of the Legend of the Galactic Hero books. This book focuses on one nation having a civil war because of the events of the first book, and them being forced to create a civil war in the other nation in order to make sure they don't take advantage of the situation. Which I think is an interesting bit of logic and politicking that is done very well with the characters as they're presented. This book has the most dramatic change for the character Reinhardt. It shows some of the changes for Julian as well, but all those changes are oddly static, and more of the flaws of the series are becoming apparent in this book. But first, let's talk about the strengths. Because at the end of the day, I liked this book, and I want to talk about its strength first. And I want you to remember that when I get to the end, because I have a lot to say about its weaknesses. The strengths, as always, come from the events and the outward plot. The interwoven machinations of all of the nations, all of the organizations, and all of the complex logic and strategy at play is brilliant. I think that some of the ideas that the characters come up with are fascinating in how they implement them, and they draw upon so much rich history that it really astounds me that these characters and this writer is able to come up with this complex and thrilling outward event. The weakness comes from the internal nature of the characters. Now, I mentioned that Reinhardt and Julian change a lot in this book. Julian changes in that he becomes more of the student of Yang Wenli and develops a lot in that role, off camera. On camera, he is displaying skills that he's really already had and has just kind of been moved to soldier. He's displaying what was already there. Reinhardt gains no additional skills whatsoever. He just gains opportunities through information, and his big change is morally. He is one of the more emotional characters in the book. Actually, I think he's the most emotional character in the book, taking over and causing a revolution out of a sense of idealism and moralism, and I believe that. And Siegfried, his good friend, is representative of that moral compass. His spy master Oberstein, however, says that his integrity is beyond reproach, and he should use some of that pragmatically. He should lie, manipulate, cheat, and steal in order to lay a more solid foundation for the revolution that comes afterward. This rings true to Reinhardt, and that question of integrity lies at the heart of his character and his temptations and his emotional frustrations with this book. He is rebelling against the evils of the Golden Bomb dynasty. I firmly believe his motivation is rooted in wanting to overthrow the person who thought that it was just his right to take his sister, that the aristocracy was a flawed and despicable system, and he does not want to abuse that authority. At the same time, he's a pragmatic general who's taking advantage of everything he can. These two schisms are at the root of his character development. As opposed to him, we have the other major characters. Yang Wenli, a philosopher and historian, who has become a strategist because of his insight into people, and his insight into history, and his insight into patterns of large groups of people. Yang Wenli just wants to get high enough in the military to leave with a good pension and be a, quote, pension thief for the rest of his life. He is in the military in order to retire and to make sure that his friends don't die, and to make sure that the government doesn't screw him over and he has some method of control. That's all Yang Li is there for. Julian wants to do his former family proud. He wants to live up to the example of Yang Wenli. He's career-focused. He wants to be a great man. Siegfried is just along for the ride with Reinhardt. Oberstein wants to see a world where he will not be persecuted. Most of the other characters are in it for money, glory, or career progression. And they just continue along that. Debatably, the people from Fazan are in it for all three of those things and control. But manipulating everything so that your government comes out ahead because of a conflict, that's pretty much all they do. And I realized no one really changed their view in this book. And actually, the more I looked at it, the more I realized this book kind of is full of robots. Everyone within this text has a fairly big issue. They don't change. Aside from Reinhardt's moral dilemma, I don't think any character in either the Empire Civil War or the Federation's coup has any crisis of faith or looks to any doubt or any information about their decision at all. They come to a idea based on their desires and their immediate impulses, and they never change from that. Every character is as you first see them, and nothing more. They don't even get more skill, and a lot of the time, only the information that people exchange, and only the outward way people change, is present in the story. Julian develops as a character off-screen at the academy. Yang Wenli picks up a gun, which he should be practicing with, throws it away because he knows he's not good. Every character has a set of abilities, and they're waiting for a chance to display it. But they never get stronger. It doesn't feel like they work towards anything. They just always were. They are being as entertaining and clever as they can, within the limits of they are already this person, they can get no stronger. And that seems to be true for the views people hold as well. Reinhardt has a opinion that he developed through a tragic event in his past. Yang Wenli was taught by his father to hold a certain view of things, and when both of them took a hold of that idea, nothing shook it. This is not to say that these views are not well thought out. Yang Wenli's constant philosophizing shows that his character has dedicated significant time to thinking about his views. Yang Wenli is an interesting case, too, because we know where he got his ideas of philosophy. He got them from his history that he's so enamored with. He clearly has studied history and patterns of the past, and that's led to his ideals and view of the future. But we never see him look to it or discover something new, at least in this text and in the previous one. It's after he's already made the decision. It's after he synthesized all this together. It's after a change. He's already become the best person he can be. None of that is expressed to the viewer. It's always after he has come to his decision, sharing his revelations, never the thought process itself. It's almost like he was born with this philosophy. In fact, I don't think that there's ever a situation which is solved by a detail on the military front, at least one that is not a personality flaw. In the first book, Yang Wenli says that technological factors are representative of a stronger economic or political stable system being brought into the fore. I see that perspective, but technology definitely is responsible for major battles and major things being won throughout history. For example, the Americans when they fought the Japanese in World War II, specifically the difference in their fighter planes. The Japanese Zero had overall better capabilities, but the Americans found out that their maneuverability was better, so they planned fights around that. The Japanese planes tried to turn to shoot them, but they couldn't because they couldn't turn fast enough. Even though their engines were better, their guns were better, all their other capabilities were better, the Americans exploited this one quality to change the quality of the fight. In the book, ships come up a lot. In the first book, I complained that it felt like they were treating ships like soldiers. They talked about how they went side to side, and how that's very strange to me, because it feels like they should act more like the Air Force. They should work in three-dimensional space, talk about engines. The technology behind them is much, much more important. They also mention that the Alliance's vessels are much stronger, or technologically superior, compared to the Empire's. They never say how. They never really get into details about anything. It's almost like it's not important. The only time details seem to matter is with people and the information that they contain. Personality quirks, political information, connections. These details the book goes into in abundance, especially their desires and motivation. And Yang Wenli and Reinhardt are shown to be geniuses with their ability to predict people. However, because people are unchanging in this world to a heavy degree, it ends up looking like Reinhardt and Yang Wenli are predicting robots. I usually like to read stories that are about a change. The people in Legend of the Galactic Heroes are stuck, fixed, in a spiral and in a rut, and they do not seem to be developing internally. Yang Wenli brings this up when he brings it up as philosophy, and I can't tell whether that's intentional or not, because that brings some meaning to it, but nothing changes, and I cannot tell whether that's the lesson this book is pessimistically trying to teach, or not. with its stories of history and philosophy? If it is, then this fixed universe is a tragedy waiting to happen. If it's not, then I can at least say I was extremely entertained with all of the politics and all of the complex logic and machinations that make this story work. But since I think that is the point, then this sad, sad tale about history repeating itself and about the fixed nature of our society, maybe something subtle and something unique. Let's see if that pans out in the next, 5 volumes? I might even be wrong about that. History goes on. I enjoyed this book. If everything I've been talking about seems interesting to you, then please check out The Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And I will see you next week. I couldn't have a coup without you and all the evil things that you do. And I'd want you to know that this is true. I'll soon be cooing for you.